This is a new lecture. This is Patrick Lecture 121, which is Displacement, Substitution, and Superimposition. For quite a few months, I have wanted to come back to personality and defensive issues because they're so prevalent. And there are different ways of addressing this. I find this lecture to be a very subtle and gentle way of talking about our defensive systems. And feedback from this first week is it's getting through to a lot of people. Sometimes you don't want to antagonize the defenses, they'll just become more defensive. So you got to work around the edges sometimes. This week's subtopic is that hidden emotional needs create disturbances. And the premise is that there is no one disturbance that can create long-lasting, ongoing issues. Now, the one that comes up for me, that's easy for me to talk about, is long-term grieving. Not talking about the first year of losing somebody important. That's the process, and it takes a while. But I am referring to a sense of hanging on to grief, hanging on to loss, so that it affects your life deeply and not necessarily positively for 10, 20, 30 years at a time. Now, whether that's the loss of a loved one, the loss of your home, the loss of your country, the loss of direction because the political situation has moved to another arena. The sense of holding on to grief and anger and sadness and so forth, if it's held on to that long, there's something else going on. There's another cause for which the technical loss becomes a substitution. And it becomes a substitution because we can understand it better. We may not be fully able to verbalize the deeper psychological loss that we feel, spiritual loss that we feel, but we can attach that loss to the loss of a dog or a spouse or a child or etc. And once we do that, now it's something we can talk about. It's also common and prevalent, so we can get empathy and sympathy from others. It's hard for people to attack us when we're grieving, when we're just sad and upset and don't pick on me. And so it's a lovely dodge for never getting to the root of the issue. So I'm a movie buff, and the movie that occurs to me here is the 1999 movie Memento. In that film, the protagonist removes the key piece of information that would help them solve the puzzle. And so the puzzle is unsolvable and therefore will consume their entire life. It's a very graphic, that's what movies and stories do. They make things very graphic. It's a very graphic representation of what we do in much smaller ways in our life. We confuse the issue, we diffuse, we look in the wrong direction, we work on the wrong problem because we're unwilling or afraid of working on the actual issue. So the guide talks about how the exclusion of certain fulfillments will create a need that will drive us to find substitute needs. And the trick is that this happens because we're not self-aware. It happens because we have a limited understanding of what's going on. We're just floundering. And it also happens because we have an erroneous unconscious concept. This is talked about over and over again in pathwork. And my illustration, I have a little sailboat with a sea anchor. It's something I learned in my life experience. And the boat, you want the wind to blow the boat, but it doesn't go anywhere because it's dragging something, exemplified by a sea anchor, which is tremendously effective. It's just a bucket on a rope thrown overboard. So that for all the wind blowing, the boat doesn't move the way it can And this is how unconscious beliefs can hold us back. And we genuinely don't understand on a conscious level what's going on. So the work is to find the unconscious beliefs. And obviously, that takes a little bit of detective work, but it also takes a willingness to find the answer. And that's underneath all of this, is to discover whether or not you have the willingness, the desire to actually find the answer, or whether you fear the answer. And that's why you go into these other layers of defense. So the guide describes superimposition as just stacking so many things on that nobody can figure out what's going on. Displacement, one example of this is the street lamp syndrome. My version of it is the vaudeville routine. You can find this on YouTube, or you can Google it, street lamp syndrome. And the vaudeville routine is that on a stage, there's a street lamp with a very small light, and somebody's looking on the ground under the street lamp for something, and his friend comes along and says, "What are you looking for?" "Well, I lost some money." "Where did you lose it?" And they point over into the darkness on the other side of the stage. "I lost it over there." And the friend says, "Well, why aren't you looking over there?" And the person says, "The light's better here." Our fear of the unknown can be so great that we cannot emotionally afford to go there. And so we will displace the need. We will create a new cause that we are more comfortable talking about, admitting that we experience, or even that other people understand. So that if I have a need that seems a little weird, I would want to cover that up and displace it into something that other people could understand. Well, if they help me understand that, it doesn't address my original need. And the last one is substitution, pretending that there's a different cause. Now, you can see where these are just very subtly the same thing. But we create a puzzle that can't be solved because it's disconnected from the actual cause. We say it's over there when it's over here, or we avoid it altogether so that it never gets started. So, very juicy lecture on personality defenses, Patrick Lecture 121. Hope you read it, and thanks for listening.